I don't think that this sort of toxic positive days is necessarily going to help much unless what you want is a sort of fragile, pacifying bliss. So I saw this post from Ralph Smart and it got me thinking. Instead of attacking what you hate, start promoting what you love. Be that change you wish to see. And this reminds me of something that you see quite a lot from New Agers, this idea that, you should just focus on what you love, on what you want to create, and not think about or look at in any way the stuff that you don't like, just sort of la-di-da-di-da, fingers and ears, just completely ignore it. Now, as far as ways to change the world and ways to improve your life, pretending bad things don't exist usually gets rid of them. But when that doesn't work, there's a conversation to be had. So jumping straight through the irony that from some people's point of view, I'm probably attacking this post from Ralph in making this video at all. Let's just jump into the fact that I do kind of agree with this, like a little bit, like a tiny, in some way. If I'm being charitable, I agree with this. But there is so much to discuss when it comes to where this kind of an idea is coming from in the New Age worldview, and all too often where it leads. So on the level of your own personal well-being, obviously it's a good idea to not spend too much time in that sort of emotional state of anger or stress, right? There, I kind of agree, right? But that doesn't mean we can't be passionate about, things that we don't like in the world and want to change them. Oftentimes that hatred is something that moves us to actually doing something. Also, focusing on what you love and focusing on what you hate, they're not always mutually exclusive. Neither is promoting what you love and attacking what you hate. Oftentimes you'll see people doing both at the same time. For example, I hate seeing people stuck in destructive communities. I hate seeing people stuck in these destructive belief systems. I love it when I see people living their best life. I love it when I see people thinking for themselves and choosing to go against the grain a little bit because they want the best for themselves, right? And when these two things meet, that's when a channel like this is born. Often I think making a positive contribution to the world, going about doing something that you care about, means focusing on something you hate and also focusing on something that you love. And especially when it comes to communicating why the thing you love matters to you, you have to communicate on that thing that you hate too. I think the fact that often what we hate and what we love sort of mirror each other speaks to something at the heart of this conversation. Often I think it's a question of how we're framing the things that we're thinking about. Focusing on the things that you hate about something can sometimes make life more unpleasant, more difficult, whereas focusing on the things that you like about something can just largely have a more positive impact, and you as a person might find it easier, more comfortable to live your life. That's not to say ignoring the bad bits, right? I suppose then it comes down to how rigorously you want to apply that framing. For instance, to use this channel as an example again, oftentimes when I make videos about people like Ralph Smart, Teal Swan, sort of poking holes in things that they say, I always get these comments from people that are just focus on what you love, not what you hate. Build people up instead of tearing them down, And now, obviously, that is a little bit of a misunderstanding about what this whole channel's about in the first place. But do you not think that that betrays, maybe just a touch, that the people that are leaving these comments perhaps aren't practicing what they're preaching? If it's so important to focus on what you love and not what you hate, then why are these comments from these people that are saying to focus on what you love and not what you hate? Why are they leaving criticism? Why aren't they leaving praise? Makes you think, doesn't it? Now, my own need to be far too facetious for my own good aside, there is a potential, on the one hand, for this kind of an approach to lead to almost denial, to just expect that if you just bung your head into the sand, then all your problems are going to fix themselves. Which, to be fair, from a law of attraction point of view, I can absolutely understand where that's coming from, because that's part of the way that these people see the world, right? But for everyone else, not so much. And the tragic thing, I think, is that if part of your worldview is that you ain't got no time for bad vibes, then you're kind of missing out on a huge chunk of the human experience, the human emotional spectrum, right? And also, I think you inhibit your ability to actually do any good in the world. And I think that's largely because most of the good that people do in the world comes off the back of recognizing the bad and then using that and being comfortable enough with that, the existence of that, to drill into it, to be able to understand it, so that you can then better create good. If you're enjoying this video as we're going through it, by the way, then please remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. That said, I can understand the whole just get on with it, just do stuff, you know, no time for focusing on the bad shit, just make stuff you're proud of, get on with it, you know? I get that to some extent. And I can also understand the drive to like not want to get stuck in these emotions that could potentially affect your body, you know, your physical health, your mental health, and cloud your judgment while they're, you know, taking over your mind. But to experience at least a decent chunk of the range of human emotion is usually part of any sort of personal growth that you might experience, any realization that you might have. And it's not just a case that you can do that once and then it's all love and light then and there. That could make you rigid, I think. It's about time and time again, like being able to feel shit and having like a relationship with your inner world and yourself where you're able to move through your emotions without getting snagged up on stuff, right? It's about feeling. It's about letting things make you reflective and introspective, letting your experiences impact you as a person, letting yourself be changed by the things that you go through, rather than like hopelessly clinging sort of neurotically to, you know, only good vibes and refusing to come down from this tower of like spiritual intellectualism, which ultimately does little more than pacify you anyway. Now, on the other hand, I think it can be really easy to get caught up in the emotional charge of hating something and end up not having a net positive effect on the world because of that. Like, think liberals on Twitter, right? We've all seen these sort of tight-knit groups of sadomasochists sort of wielding this floppy hammer of valid criticism, right? We've all seen that, I think, if you've been on Twitter. And also Instagram's got a little bit of it. I've been able to stay out of those circles. By the way, while I mentioned Instagram, if you're on Instagram, I'm running this 20 days of integrity campaign over there on my Instagram at the moment, talking about integrity and independence of mind. So if you're interested in getting involved in that, seeing some of the insights from myself and people who have survived cults and toxic online culture, then definitely follow me over on Instagram. Oh, that was smooth as shit getting that in there. I'm proud of myself. Anyway, back to talking about not getting whipped up into a rabid frenzy by sadomasochists. In these kinds of circles where there is this emphasis on, you know, being super hypercritical and honestly quite cynical, there is this sort of temperament and social milieu that is defined by this fascinating sanctimoniousness. To quote Mark Fisher, it is driven by a priest's desire to excommunicate and condemn, an academic pedant's desire to be the first to be seen to spot a mistake, and a hipster's desire to be one of the in crowd. And this is given weight by dividing the world up into innocents and transgressors, and then sort of penguin shuffling over into the innocents group before the torpedoes of righteous indignation are launched at whoever has transgressed in an unapproved way today. So like, yeah, there's ways to take focusing on what you hate too far as well, I think. And the thing is, right, when it comes down to it, when you get this kind of like focus on what you love, not what you hate, especially when it's coming from someone like Ralph Smart, I think it sort of functions as a thought-stopping cliche. It sort of functions as the anticipation of dissent and then a preemptive encouraging of an avoidant response to it. It becomes head in the sandism. And yet on the other side, it can become this really nasty, bitchy, sort of sanctimonious, well actually kind of a vibe, and that's not nice either. It's not nice to be around that, it's not nice to be that person, and it certainly doesn't really help in any way that I can imagine to make the world a better place. I think to stand any chance of making what we have, what we share in the world good, whether that is on a personal level or on a collective level, I think we've got to be ready to look at, to face up to certain uncomfortable realities. I think we've got to be ready to disagree and to dialogue with those people we disagree with honestly and respectfully, and to do so charitably as well. That's something that I've been learning for myself recently, and you'll see, you know, over the last year or so on this channel, what I've been talking about and the way that I've been talking about it has been changing because of this. Nonetheless, I don't think that this sort of toxic positive days is necessarily going to help much unless what you want is a sort of fragile, pacifying bliss that allows you to just switch off from the world and live in your own bubble. Don't get me wrong, sometimes a bubble's good. But I think if you want to have a positive impact on the world, as so many New Agers do, I realize, maybe that's not the best way to go about it. I think it's very possible to focus on what you hate and then through a little bit of cheeky alchemy have that inform a larger, more positive view of your life, the world, yourself, whatever it is, and have that be a force for good in the world. And I think it's possible that through going about trying to make the world or your life better in some way, there are gonna be times where, whether you intend it or not, your criticisms, your disagreements, your dislikes of certain things, your dissent in general, may make someone feel like you're attacking them. And at the end of the day, if that's how they feel, then maybe they could frame it a bit differently in their mind and only focus on what they love about what you're saying instead. Put it in their court. And, you know, as I'm saying this, I'm wondering, isn't this fucking obvious? Is that not just like kind of how we all live a little bit anyway? I think it's a pretty good way of getting shit done, even if it's uncomfortable for the people that like the thing you don't like. And if you're not sure you agree with me that that is a good way of going about things, or that that's possible at all, then that's fine. But if you're open to being convinced, consider watching this video again and notice how it is me doing exactly that. What I love about this whole thing though is that it's like some people have just never heard of constructive criticism, you know? Every week I upload a bit of extra content to my Patreon, so if you're interested in supporting the channel and getting a bit of extra content from me, then consider supporting me over on the Patreon. There's a link to that in the description and on the end card. Otherwise, I'm Andy Fellows. Please remember to follow me over on Instagram for 20 days of integrity, and please be kind and ask good questions, and I'll see you in the next one.